This is also a time of change for my family.
The decision did not come with shouting. It came with silence. A sealed palace memorandum was placed before King Charles, and by the time he finished reading it, the future of Queen Camilla's public role had changed. What followed was not a minor adjustment, not a quiet correction, but a stunning royal removal from coronation-related events after a palace protocol breach was confirmed. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Charles stared at the page longer than anyone expected. The king had faced storms before, but this one carried a different weight, because it came from inside the walls, not beyond them. The memorandum, a formal palace note used to record serious decisions and confirmed findings, stated in plain terms that Camilla had breached protocol around access, precedence, and private ceremonial arrangements. Palace protocol means the official rules that decide who enters, who stands where, and who receives ceremonial importance during royal events. This was why the damage cut so deeply. The issue was not only a changed seat or a guest list, it was the crown asking whether its own rules still mattered. The king rested one hand near the fountain pen, but did not lift it at first. He knew what signing meant. Coronation-related anniversary events were not ordinary public duties. They were ceremonies connected to the memory of his crowning and the public image of his reign. The coronation itself is the sacred ceremony where a monarch is formally crowned before the nation, and every event connected to it carries meaning far beyond attendance. Camilla's place at those events symbolized acceptance. Her absence would say something louder than any speech. Camilla received the decision in a private room, and for a moment, she did not react with anger. She simply looked at the message as if the words had been written in another language. The queen consort had stood beside him when history placed the crown on his head. Yet now the same institution was drawing a line between her and the ceremonies meant to honor that moment. Her silence was not weakness, it was shock. The man she had defended, followed, and waited beside, had signed an order that removed her from the center of royal memory. Charles understood the wound he was creating. He also understood the warning given by a senior courtier in a documented internal briefing. If the breach was ignored, the monarchy would look fragile, careless, and easily bent by personal pressure. The confirmed violation involved an unauthorized intervention in ceremonial seating and guest access for the coronation commemorations. In simple terms, someone had tried to shift who mattered in the room before the event even began. The palace absorbed the decision like a blow behind closed doors. Staff lowered their voices. Private offices moved quickly, and through the family, one question began to rise with dangerous force. Who first reported the breach? And why did the confirmation reach Charles at the exact moment it did? But before the palace could understand the breach, it had to confront the people trapped inside it. A king torn between love and duty, a queen facing public humiliation, and a family watching power shift in real time. Camilla had survived whispers before. She had endured cold rooms, public judgment, and the long shadow of history. But this was different. This was not gossip from outside the palace gates. This was judgment from within the institution itself. And when Charles removed her from coronation events, the wound was not only official, it was personal. Charles entered the private audience room with the careful stillness of a man carrying a decision that could not be softened. Camilla was already waiting, and the queen did not rise. She looked at him once, then looked away, as if his silence had reached her before his words did. An audience room is a private formal space where royal conversations can happen away from public eyes, and this one now held the kind of pain no palace statement could ever explain. The king was not only her husband in that room, he was sovereign, the person responsible for protecting the crown's rules when those rules were tested. Camilla watched him remain standing, and that small delay told her everything. Charles did not sit, because comfort would have made the moment feel negotiable. He spoke with restraint, but the consequence landed like a door being locked from the other side. Her place in the coronation-related events had been removed. The ceremonies were not simple public appearances. They were tied to the memory of the crowning, the moment when the monarchy showed the nation its order, its future, and its discipline. Her presence beside him had always meant acceptance. Her absence would now mean punishment. The queen tried to defend herself before the silence swallowed the room. She said the adjustment was harmless, just a small correction around access and placement. But her voice sharpened when she realized Charles was not there to debate the details. He was there to deliver the result. Protocol means the palace rules that decide rank, access, seating, and ceremonial order. And the king understood why the breach mattered. If those rules could be bent by private pressure, then every future ceremony could be weakened the same way. William's name entered the conversation without him being present. The prince had not openly attacked Camilla, but his quiet concern had moved through the palace with force. He knew the monarchy could not afford another storm about privilege, entitlement, or private influence. Anne's name followed, even heavier. The Princess Royal had spent her life respecting order, and her silence carried judgment. Camilla understood that Anne did not need to accuse her. The restraint itself felt like a verdict. Charles turned toward the door, and the Queen finally asked the question that had been forming behind her eyes. Did this decision come from him alone? The king paused, and that pause changed the room. Camilla heard the answer before he gave one. The truth was wider than marriage, deeper than anger, and far more dangerous than she had imagined. That hesitation becomes the first crack in the official story, because the breach did not begin with a memorandum. It began with a moment everyone inside the palace would later call the point of no return. Every palace crisis has a moment people remember too late. A glance, a sentence, a door closed too firmly. In this story, it happened during a private coronation anniversary rehearsal, when Camilla stepped beyond what protocol allowed and changed the tone of the room. Those present did not shout. They watched, and then they remembered. Camilla arrived with the confidence of someone who believed the room would bend before it resisted. The Queen had been told the rehearsal was routine, but nothing around the crown is ever routine when names, seats, and order are involved. A coronation anniversary service is a formal event, marking the memory of a monarch's crowning, and every place inside it carries meaning. The approved seating and procession order showed who entered first, who stood closest, and who represented royal unity. That was why her request cut through the room like a warning. A senior aide stepped closer and reminded Camilla that the arrangements had already been signed off under the king's authority. The aide kept his voice low, but the words carried. The Queen stared at him before saying her household should not be treated like an afterthought. Her private circle, she insisted, deserved access beyond the established guest boundary. That boundary meant the official line separating invited guests from those allowed into protected ceremonial areas. To her, it sounded like dignity. To the room, it sounded like pressure. Anne heard the exchange and understood its danger before anyone named it. The Princess Royal said almost nothing, yet her expression changed when Camilla pressed again. She knew this was not truly about 2 extra guests. It was about whether personal influence could push past the rules that kept the monarchy from looking careless. Anne had spent a lifetime inside that discipline, and the Queen's words struck her as something far heavier than irritation. The breach became serious later, when Camilla's instruction appeared inside a working access list. A working access list is the practical document staff use to decide who can pass into restricted event areas. And finding the change there meant the request had moved from conversation into palace machinery. The courtier who discovered it did not confront the Queen. He locked the paper inside a folder, recorded the alteration in a documented account, and sent it upward through the chain of command. Camilla left the rehearsal first, convinced she had protected her place. Anne remained behind long enough to ask one question. Who authorized the change? That question traveled farther than anyone expected, and by the time it reached the king, it had become impossible to ignore, setting the stage for a confrontation no palace aide could soften. The room was cleared before Camilla arrived. No advisors, no secretaries, no soft voices waiting near the wall. Only Charles, Camilla, and the decision neither of them could escape. The monarchy had turned inward, and for the first time since the coronation, the woman crowned beside him was being told she would not stand beside him now. Charles had chosen this meeting himself because staff could not carry a wound this personal. The king knew the breach touched 2 worlds at once: the marriage he had defended for years, and the crown he was sworn to protect. The crown means the monarchy as an institution, not just the person wearing the crown, and that difference now mattered more than comfort. If he allowed the breach to pass quietly, every private preference inside the palace could begin to look stronger than royal order. Camilla sat opposite him, and her hands tightened when he used the word removed. The Queen heard the cold shape of it. Removed from public appearances. Removed from ceremonial seating. Removed from official participation in the commemorative moments tied to the coronation legacy. A coronation is the formal ceremony where a monarch is crowned, and every event connected to it carries the weight of public approval, family unity, and historic memory. Her place there had once meant victory after years of judgment. Now her absence would announce defeat without one public sentence being spoken. Charles kept his voice low, but the effort showed. He told Camilla that love could not be allowed to rewrite order, and the sentence struck her harder than anger would have. The king was not shouting. That made it worse. He was calm because the choice had already been made. Camilla looked at him as if she were seeing the throne between them for the first time, not as an ornament, not as a symbol, but as a wall. Camilla demanded to know whether William had pushed him. Then she asked about Anne. The queen's voice sharpened around both names, because she understood their different kinds of power. William represented the future. Anne represented discipline. Charles answered that neither one needed to persuade him. The file spoke for itself. A documented palace account had shown that the corrected access list had already reached planning staff, meaning the unauthorized change had nearly entered the official event structure. The silence after that was brutal. Camilla understood what he was saying. This was no longer a misunderstanding. It had moved from private request to palace record. Charles reached for the signed order and placed it on the table between them. The queen did not touch it. She stared at it, as though refusing the paper might hold back the consequence for one more second. Charles waited, but Camilla stayed still. The king finally turned away, carrying the grief of a husband and the burden of a monarch in the same breath. But the signed order was only the visible weapon. Behind it stood the deeper force Camilla feared most, the machinery of the crown moving without her permission. Palaces do not always move loudly. Sometimes power shifts through folders, signatures, revised seating charts, and the quiet removal of a name from a schedule. Camilla's punishment looked like Charles's decision, but behind that decision stood a larger truth. The crown had protected itself, and once that machine began turning, even the queen could not stop it. Charles knew the order carried more force than anger ever could. The king had signed consequences into motion, and every office around him understood what that meant. The Palace Protocol Office, the department that controls royal order, access, seating, timing, and ceremonial rank, had become the hidden engine of the crisis. Its rules were older than any private argument, and that was why the breach mattered so deeply. If one person could bend the order for personal preference, the whole structure would begin to look weak. William entered a side room before the final decision, and the prince chose every word with care. He did not speak like a son trying to punish Camilla. He spoke like a future king trying to protect the monarchy from another wound. He told Charles that private interference could not be rewarded, because the public already watched the royal family for signs of entitlement. The prince understood that one altered list could become a symbol, and symbols were dangerous when the crown was already under pressure. Charles listened without interrupting. The king looked wounded, not because William was cruel, but because he was right. His argument was disciplined, constitutional, and impossible to dismiss. Constitutional, in plain terms, means tied to the rules and duties that guide how the monarchy behaves in public life. Charles was not being asked to choose between affection and spite. He was being asked to choose between personal comfort and institutional survival. Anne's influence surfaced through a single line in a documented palace account. A courtier revealed in that written record that the Princess Royal had asked for the rehearsal access list to be checked twice. Anne did not storm into the room. She did not need to. Her small request exposed the altered access chain, and the courtier understood why it mattered. The Princess Royal knew that ceremonial boundaries protect the monarchy from chaos, and once those boundaries are treated as optional, every future event becomes vulnerable. The power behind Camilla's removal was not revenge. It was containment. The Queen's name had first been expected near the center of the coronation anniversary sequence, where her presence would signal unity and continuity. Then the revised event schedule arrived. An aide checked it once, then again. Camilla's name had not been moved down. It had been removed entirely from the central sequence. That single deletion changed the atmosphere of the palace, because once Camilla saw her absence in writing, the punishment stopped being theoretical and became a public reality waiting to happen. The first sign of fallout was not a headline. It was an empty space on a printed program. A name that had once carried ceremony, rank, and expectation was gone. Inside the palace, people lowered their voices. Doors closed faster. Camilla's household understood at once that this was more than embarrassment. It was a controlled royal distancing. Camilla held the revised program with both hands, and the Queen read it twice before anyone dared speak. The coronation event program was the official running order for the commemorative ceremony, showing who appeared, where they stood, and how the royal family would be presented to the public. Her role had been removed from the central proceedings, and her office had been told not to release separate participation details. That mattered because separate details could make her absence look optional. The palace wanted no confusion. The decision was final. The Queen folded the paper once, slowly, as though a sharper movement would reveal too much. Her anger stayed hidden, but the hurt did not. Camilla understood what the blank space meant. It did not only remove her from a ceremony, it removed her from a story she believed she had earned the right to share. The coronation had once placed her beside Charles before the nation. Now the anniversary of that same moment was being used to mark distance. Charles sat in another room with a briefing he could not absorb. The king heard every sentence, yet his mind stayed fixed on Camilla's face when she learned the truth. A royal briefing is a prepared update given to the monarch before major duties, and this one should have focused on timing, guests, and public messages. Instead, it became a reminder that his signature had protected the crown while wounding the woman closest to him. A member of Camilla's household asked quietly whether she could still attend in private. The answer returned with no softness. She could not appear in any capacity that suggested official inclusion. That detail made the punishment heavier, because it blocked even the comfort of quiet presence. The Queen was not simply being moved away from the center. She was being kept outside the meaning of the event. William's office began preparing for questions before the first question was asked. The prince did not seek attention, but he understood what the public would see. Camilla's absence would not look like scheduling. It would look like rupture. Anne's position made the wound deeper, because the Princess Royal was now expected to stand closer to Charles in the ceremonial arrangement. Anne had not taken Camilla's place, yet the image would feel like a verdict. Camilla learned that Charles would attend the first event without her, and the room around her seemed to tighten. The Queen said nothing. The silence said enough. That image, Charles moving forward while Camilla is left behind, forces the crisis into its most human moment, where rank disappears and only two people remain. By nightfall, the palace no longer felt like a fortress. It felt like a house divided by duty. Charles and Camilla met without officials, without files, without anyone to translate pain into procedure. For once, the crisis was not about protocol, programs, or public optics. It was about the cost of wearing a crown when the person hurt most is sitting across from you. Charles stood near the table and said nothing at first. Camilla understood that silence better than any explanation. The revised schedule had already been finalized, which meant the decision could no longer be softened by delay or hidden behind staff language. A revised schedule is the updated official plan showing who attends, where they appear, and what role they hold during royal events. This mattered because her absence was now built into the structure of the ceremony itself. The Queen was not waiting for permission anymore. She was facing the meaning of refusal. Camilla looked at him with a sadness that had burned through anger. She told Charles that being removed from coronation events felt like being erased from the very history she had helped him reach. The coronation was the ceremony that placed him before the nation as monarch, and her place beside him had once told the world that she belonged there. Now the king had taken that place away, and she felt the wound not as a public slight, but as a private betrayal. Charles answered slowly, and his voice nearly broke. He told Camilla the crown could not be defended only when the rules were easy to protect. The crown means the monarchy as a lasting institution, bigger than one marriage, one argument, or one wounded heart. He knew the sentence sounded harsh. He knew it made him look cold. But he also knew that if protocol bent for love, then duty would never stand firm again. Camilla finally admitted what she had not said before. In a recorded private conversation preserved in a palace account, she revealed that she pushed the access change because she felt her household was being quietly diminished. The Queen had seen small exclusions, smaller courtesies, and colder treatment. She feared being reduced again, not by the public, but by the very system that had crowned her. Charles softened, but he did not reverse himself. The king told Camilla he would not allow the palace to humiliate her beyond the removal, but he would not restore her place in the events. The boundary was final. Mercy would protect her dignity. Duty would protect the monarchy. Camilla left the room slowly, and Charles remained standing after the door closed. The king knew the next morning the world would begin to notice what the palace already knew. And when the world noticed, it did not see a minor palace adjustment. It saw the queen missing from the very rituals meant to celebrate the king's reign. By sunrise, the palace secret had crossed the gates. What began as a private punishment became a national spectacle the moment the official event order appeared without Camilla's name. Britain did not need a statement to understand the message. The absence was the statement, and in that empty space, the public saw a marriage, a monarchy, and a reign under strain. Charles stepped into the morning, knowing the silence would not protect him for long. The official coronation anniversary event program had been released, and Camilla's expected role was missing from the ceremonial sequence. A ceremonial sequence is the planned order of royal actions during an event, showing who arrives, who stands near the monarch, and who carries symbolic importance. That mattered because these events were not casual duties. They were public reminders of his crowning, his legitimacy, and the image of unity the monarchy wanted the nation to believe. Camilla watched the coverage from a private sitting room, and the queen did not flinch when her name came up. The palace communications team avoided emotional explanation, offering only controlled language about revised arrangements. Palace communications means the office that shapes official messages before they reach the public, and in this crisis, its restraint made the story feel even sharper. No one needed a dramatic announcement. The program had already spoken. Charles arrived at the first event composed, but the strain followed him like a shadow. The king moved forward alone, and the absence beside him carried more force than any statement ever could. People had once watched Camilla stand near him as proof that the long battle for acceptance had ended. Now they watched him without her, and that single missing figure turned ceremony into judgment. Camilla lowered the sound when her own image appeared on screen. The queen sat still, as commentators discussed the missing place beside the king, and her calm only made the hurt feel deeper. She had not been pushed into exile, but she had been pushed out of meaning. That distinction mattered. A private punishment had become a public lesson. One London newspaper captured the moment with brutal clarity. Its front page showed Charles walking alone beneath the headline, "The Empty Place Beside the King," while Camilla's faded coronation portrait sat in the corner like a memory being removed from the present. Outside Buckingham Palace, a small crowd gathered near the gates, not cheering, not protesting, only watching. One woman held the paper in both hands and said, they would not remove her unless something serious happened. The media storm grew by the hour, but inside the monarchy, the emotional verdict had already been reached. Charles had chosen institutional survival over personal comfort. That choice becomes the final measure of the crisis, because when the noise fades, what remains is not the scandal itself, but what it reveals about power, loyalty, and the crown. In the end, the palace did not collapse. The crown did not shake loose from history. The events continued. The hymns were sung, the car doors opened, and Charles carried the day as king. But something had changed. Camilla's removal proved that even the person closest to the throne could be placed outside its circle when protocol was broken. Charles walked into the final coronation-related event without the woman who had once stood beside him at the center of history. The king paused before entering, and that small hesitation carried the weight of everything he had chosen. The crown, in plain terms, means the monarchy as an institution, not only the person wearing the crown, and this was why the decision mattered so deeply. He had not simply changed a schedule. He had shown that royal order could survive even when the consequence cut into his own marriage. Camilla accepted the reality in private, wounded but no longer fighting the order. The queen understood by then that her greatest loss was not missing one event. It was the public proof that her influence had limits. The coronation-related events were ceremonies tied to the memory of the king's crowning, and her absence from them told the country that personal closeness did not guarantee ceremonial power. She had gained acceptance slowly, painfully, year after year. Now she had been reminded that acceptance could be measured, controlled, and withdrawn. Charles completed the key event with quiet discipline, but the silence around him felt different. The king did not look victorious. He looked burdened. He had protected the monarchy, yet he had also wounded Camilla in a way no private apology could fully repair. That contrast became the emotional heart of the crisis. Success for the crown had come through suffering inside the family. William emerged from the moment with quiet authority. The prince had not defeated Camilla, and he did not need to claim victory. His vision of a disciplined monarchy had been strengthened, because Charles had finally drawn a hard line. William understood that the future would demand fewer private exceptions, fewer blurred boundaries, and fewer moments where personal influence could challenge public duty. Anne became the silent moral frame of the story. A documented palace account showed that the Princess Royal's request to recheck the rehearsal list helped expose the altered access chain. Anne's steadiness mattered, because she represented the monarchy's oldest lesson: rank without restraint becomes danger. She did not need dramatic words. Her discipline spoke for her. Charles could still love Camilla, but he could not let love outrank the crown. Her removal from coronation events became a defining act of his reign. Painful, humiliating, and necessary. Protocol had been breached. Consequences followed. The monarchy's message was complete. The crown remained above everyone. And so the story closes not with triumph, but with a colder truth. Inside the monarchy, love may shape history, but duty decides who stands beside the throne. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.